Felix here. Good morning to you. Another day, another bank run. First Republic Bank is on fire sale. What have they done? Well, they've lost a tremendous amount of deposits and they're going to dispose of, sell between 50 to $100 billion of assets. What kind of assets, you might be wondering? Well, they actually have a pretty significant mortgage portfolio. So those are a lot of mortgages for very wealthy people. If you didn't realize it, First Republic Bank has some of the ultra wealthy amongst their roster. I'm going to look at that. We're of course also going to look at Microsoft earnings, Google earnings, everything the market's doing. How are we down so much yesterday and what's going on today? NASDAQ up, stock market, S&P down. Of course, none of the following is financial advice. You know that by now. We do, however, have, even in that direction, the best disclaimers in the business. So make sure you smash that like button before you do anything. This is a live session, so you can ask questions. Put them in the chat. I'll do my utmost to answer every single last one of them. And if I miss it, well, you can always head over to felixschwanzerog.com/Patreon and ask them in the community and chat with me later on in the day. Good morning to everybody. So let me share my screen with you here for a moment to show you what's going on right here. Oh, the S&P is up indeed. Well, Microsoft has done it, I suppose. So there we are. Here we go. This is pre-market where we're sitting. Volatility is probably the only thing that's actually down now. NASDAQ really flying. And why is that? Because what we've got here is pre-market. Microsoft up 7%. We've got Snowflake up 5%. Xpeng up 4%, Amazon, much more importantly, up 4% in sympathy. No, probably because Google's cloud business is profitable, and that makes Amazon kind of optimistic, I imagine, because a huge part of their business is their cloud business. Interesting, though, which is slightly hidden in the numbers, is that the ad part of Google's business, which is the majority of it, is declining. So that might not make Facebook's earnings look particularly glorious. We also have a Coinbase up 6%. Wow. We've got 3%, sorry. No, 6%. I was right. So let's sort that by biggest to smallest. Amazon up, apologies, 2%. The pre-market gap is 4%. It's up 2.7%. Nvidia up 2.3%. Barber up 2.3%. Meta up 1.8%. Just in general, overall exuberance, sympathy. And what's down? VIX, that's the fear index. Netflix down 0.7. Johnson & Johnson down a bit. Verizon down a bit more. Nike down 0.3. Apple down 0.2. But the big boys are offsetting that. And banks are losing a little bit, or rather a lot. This is FRC, First Republic Bank. They were trading in the 2nd of February at $147. Now they're down 95%, trading at $683 today. That's not very healthy, is it? And be interesting to see how this affects the Fed. So I pour myself a hot beverage. What the bond market was saying yesterday is, take cover. Bond market now no longer predicting a clear 0.25% interest rate hike in May, which is kind of what we've all been expecting. Bond market slightly easing off that. I still think we're going to get it, but that's probably really the end of it now, because they've broken a couple of banks. They don't want to break that many more, which is gonna help us here, I think. So yeah, Microsoft numbers, I think they were pretty decent. I just think they use the word AI a lot, and they're kind of essentially saying AI is going to change everything. And I suppose some people are hoping that AI is going to dethrone Google as a search engine. I think that's the Microsoft rally here. Google basically coming out going, yeah, AI is important, but it's just another iteration of what we've already been doing. And I know it looks very exciting, but don't get too excited about it. And anyway, we're doing it too, which is why Google isn't up quite as much. So it's a little bit of a storytelling. Now, can you dethrone Google? I mean, Google basically owns the internet, right? Try finding anything on the internet without Google. If they got complacent, it's possible. But you also don't want to write Google off. And I also don't want to say that Microsoft has a history of creating amazing product. They are known for creating just good enough product, and they are amazing at marketing and selling it. They don't actually make outstanding products. That's not really the way Microsoft rolls. Whereas Google, is probably a little bit better on the product creation, I would have thought. So it's going to be an interesting one to see those two Goliaths hit it off around AI. I'm still using Google, though, I must say. Quay, in all his exuberance, says everything will fail except gold, land, and labor. Yes, perhaps, although most land is financed through financial machinations, which might make that a Ponzi scheme too. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Jerome. Good morning, Andrea, Eric, Johnson. Are they going to split? Are they? I didn't see that yet. Let me know if they are. Is FRC going to get delisted? Not necessarily, but if they drop a little bit more, they might. I mean, really, you have to think. Again, the big banks love this because all those really wealthy guys with all their mortgages and all their money in FRC, well, they've all buggered off to JP Morgan, and JP Morgan's wealth department, private banking is sitting there going, amazing, we love a banking crisis, let's start another. And I think that's a little bit what's going on here. And I just think that these regional banks are going to be all in irrelevance. They're all going to disappear. Maybe not completely disappear, but nobody in their right mind is going to want to bank with them. Like, why would you take the risk, right? When you can go to JP Morgan, and that's always been the strength of JP Morgan since JP Morgan was alive. The UK's blocked Microsoft Activision deal, says Christian. Thank you very much for sharing that. Is that final, or is that going to get appealed and go through the courts and that sort of thing? Or is there something they could spin off in the UK? I don't know how much of Activision's revenue comes from the UK. But yeah, an interesting one, whether that'll go through or not. They will lose that land to auction that has been called. Andrea, you've used Bing. That's something not many people would have admitted to about 6 months ago. Maybe I should try it as well. Would JP Morgan buy FRC? No, they don't need to. So FRC is basically going to put up for auction or fire sale its best assets, which is his high, ultra wealthy client unit, or just the mortgages. So half the houses in the Hamptons have an FRC mortgage underneath it. And I actually am going to put out a video on this, a little explaining a bit more later, but let me run you through the thought process. If you are very wealthy, you don't want to pay death taxes, inheritance taxes, estate duties, whatever you call them. So you want to get around it, and you can, because there isn't a federal inheritance tax, but there are state ones. And each state has a free limit. So say Massachusetts, if you have more than $1 million in Massachusetts, when you croak it, your children are going to have to pay tax on that. So how do you do that with that beautiful house in Nantucket that you have that's worth 15 million? How do you get that out of that death tax bracket? Well, very simple. You go to FRC and you say, can you give me an interest-only mortgage for 14 million? And they'll say, gladly, Mr. Billionaire. And you then pay a little bit of interest. You fix the interest rates for 10 or 20 years. And now you only have $1 million in Massachusetts and 14 million of debt that you are quite happy to service, because you can also use the other 14 million in cash to invest in other businesses and trade and whatever it is that you do, which gets you significantly more than the interest you're paying. But most importantly, it gets you out of paying the taxes. So that's one of the things that FRC has been really, really good at. And those mortgages are glorious because not only is the underlying asset great, Hamptons houses, Nantucket houses, that sort of thing, which are going to go up in value as the economy recovers. And secondly, the guys who are paying for those mortgages have a lot of cash, so they're not really a credit risk. And thirdly, if you are JP Morgan, you actually want to do business with the guys that own the mega mansions, because they have got businesses, they're doing deals, they're doing acquisitions, they're great customers as a bank. So everybody wants this loan book, this mortgage book of FRC. So FRC, I think, will be all right in the sense that they're not going to run out of cash, but they're giving away the golden goose, and then they're just another regional bank that nobody's going to want to bank with. So it's the end of FRC, basically. What do you think about Neo, says John? Yeah, I was actually thinking about making a Neo video today. Look, I think it's been a tough time for Chinese companies with lockdowns and everything else and supply chain. And I think they're coming out of that. We're seeing the economy picking up, which is good. We're seeing lending easing, which is good. But we haven't seen a drastic increase in demand, which you might have expected from consumers for things like cars, because you don't really need a new car, right? Most of the time you can put that off. So what are they spending money on? Well, they're enjoying themselves. They're going out, they're eating dinners, they're traveling, they're doing all the things that they couldn't do. And buying a car doesn't seem as high on the list as it was pre-COVID. So I think we have to go through this kind of readjustment because, they've only just opened up to kind of see where the demand side is going. And then really they have to fix the supply side. So I think they're using it wisely, this kind of slight lull, in a sense that they're putting out a lot of new models. They're doing a lot of their kind of tech investments. They're rolling out infrastructure across Europe and learning and understanding what the customers are there and stuff. But this isn't a we're going to sell 1 million cars tomorrow kind of a situation, right? I know William Lee indicated they might get to 250,000 this year, but that would imply a very significant ramp up in the second half of the year. And remember, last year, their chief financial officer promised us 190,000 vehicles or something like that. He promised 100% growth, which they missed by a very wide margin. So it makes me feel a little bit less trusting in what management says. I like a conservative management, but I still think the product's good. Chinese are buying Chinese. They're stopping buying foreign-made things because that's just the way that the tide is turned. So I think that's a good thing for Neo. The Tesla price cuts, in the short term, I think that might hurt them with demand. In the long term, I think it'll just create the actual premium division between Tesla, mass market car, Toyota, Volkswagen, and then other premium brands like Neo, which will be, more your kind of BMW, Mercedes kind of brand positioning. And I'm sorry if you drive a Tesla, but it is a mass brand. I mean, I drive a Tesla here in Monaco. It's a lovely thing to drive, but it isn't going to be positioned as a luxury vehicle. That isn't their positioning at all. They want to sell millions and millions and millions of these, and you can't say millions and millions of anything and make it a luxury good. It doesn't really work. So I hope that sort of covers that. Capitalism is dead. Well, give us another system that's better. I think it's a little bit like that. It's a bit like democracy, isn't it? It's the worst, least bad system out there. John says Neo's also in the Netherlands. You can only lease them. Yeah, they started with leasing, although I've seen that they are making them available for purchase across Europe. So I think you'd be able to purchase them too, as well. Kyle, you also use Bing. That's another one. We should get you guys T-shirts. I use Bing. I'm proud of it. Something like that. So that's kind of where we are at with that. We did some interesting trading yesterday, if you swear, in our Facebook group. I also put it into the Patreon as well. What did I put in there? Well, I'm doing this experiment at the moment with the 0-day options trading, which is, on the face of it, a crazily risky thing to do. It's like 100 times riskier than what I usually do. But it's an interesting one. So we had this trade, for example, yesterday, only the first part, and it was about 4 hours after I set it up, it was losing $7,000. I'm doing this for simulated trading, so I'm not losing my shirt, don't worry. And I could then adjust it, and we ended the day with a $2,700 profit. So we could literally just flip the trade around completely within the space of about half an hour and make some really nice money out of that yesterday. So it's a really interesting study because I don't need to be right. I thought I'd have to be right on direction. That doesn't happen too often. So I was really wrong on direction. I thought the market would go up, and obviously the market tanked like 1-something% yesterday. So, but we still ended the day making money. So that's kind of the one of the things I'm sharing with you, and there's always a Loom link here every day where you can see me make those trades. Again, you get that through the Patreon, felixfrancelog.com/Patreon. I'll do it again today, just as the market opens. If you want to see like my process of actually developing a trading plan, I haven't got one quite firm yet. I've got a fairly good idea, but I want to see how it works. And I love days like yesterday where I get hit in the face really hard. And I'm looking at I was going to make $3,000. Now I'm down $7,000. What do I do with this? And then I can fix it. That's actually that's the part I want to practice. I want to make sure that my strategy for fixing it actually works in a situation where you've got hours rather than weeks, which is what I usually have in my time profile. So check that out, felixfrancelog.com/Patreon while it's still there. Normally I only share trades with the coaching community and our course community. But yeah, you can get a bit of a glimpse over there. Right, let me just see. Lots of rants here. Glenn, some of you guys think Google's going to make it. I also, I mean, I'm at this point, I'm team Google for sure. I just think they have it takes a lot to change, but then you never know, right? Sometimes, remember, what is it? Netscape, the browser of all browsers, and that disappeared. I'm glad you're laughing. Well, but we closed the day with, was it $2,500 profit? Let me just look it up. 0 DTE, that's our spreadsheet. We closed today with $2,565 profit. So we keep a track of it as well, which I've shared with you as well. So you can see my adjustment here, and then we closed the day at 2,500. So far, our experiment has gone pretty well. We've made $5,000 in 6 trading days, which isn't too bad, is it? So let's keep doing this for a little while, and then we might actually start doing this live with some real money. Bing, how to install Chrome. Yeah, that's usually the thing I ask on a new device. Exactly. I'm Christian. I'm like, why is this installed on here? Where is Chrome? Download Chrome. And Kyle, I'm with you on that also. I own both stocks, which isn't financial advice, but I think if you look at the numbers again, and again, this is part of our Patreon, this little clever tool here. We look at Microsoft versus Google. Different businesses, different business models, but let me just pull them up for you here in terms of data. Microsoft has Alphabet. Google's data is gone because of the earnings today, but Microsoft 68% gross margin, 40% return on equity. So you give them $100 and they generate $40 profit on top of that every single year with your shareholder capital. So that's pretty good, right? Very low debt, 35%. Forward PE is significantly lower. Sales are a little bit slow, but last 5 years has been good. Earnings per share, last 5 years, 24% growth per year. That's pretty impressive. And institutions own a track record of 72%, Google 63%. The Google data will show up here in a day or two as we got the new data out. So when earnings come out, the data obviously flips over. But yeah, it's a really good place, I think, to go and start some fundamental research on stocks you're looking at. And I always do this for my portfolio. So it's part of the Patreon. Go down and get it. It's like 50 cents a day, something like that. You can just try it for a month. felixfrancelog.com/Patreon. Diego, the debt market. I put a post out into the community the other day as well. Here it is. There it is. This was 2011. The top chart is the S&P 500. The bottom chart is the fear index, or the VIX, which is really important for us options traders. Basically makes our options more profitable. So the thought process, the calculation previously was that the US would run out of money probably in late July. And now we're thinking it might be June because tax receipts that have come in are much, much lower. So therefore, it's likely to happen much, much quicker. And that could surprise markets. And I would expect volatility to go up with that, and possibly the market to come down somewhat, depending on how long the Muppets in Washington debate this, because it's a problem. Now, the real problem, I think, is that nobody in Washington is suggesting that we shouldn't raise the debt ceiling. Instead, we should cut expenses, which would be the rational thing to do. But rationality and politics don't really go hand in hand. So Biden is running, Trump is running. Who else is running? Anybody under the age of 99 that might actually want to do something? I don't know. Sunex says, yeah, I'm always an option seller. Well, not always, but the vast majority of times, I'm an option seller rather than an options buyer. And there was a study actually on the zero DTE options craze, and retail traders were doing quite well when they were selling options. When they started buying options, they're losing $500,000 a day or something like that. So, well, they're losing it. They're basically just sending it directly to Citadel and the other guys in the hedge fund community who are, I'm sure, absolutely loving this. What's the worst case scenario for FRC? Well, that the bank run worsens and that they are just going to get shut down and taken over by the government. I think that's the worst case scenario here. They've lost significant deposits. I think they'll lose a lot more deposits. But as I say, they have at least $170 billion in actually good assets in terms of mortgages and loans, which they can sell. But once they sell that, they've sold the family silver and they've got nothing left to do. So they're just going to become a crappy regional bank. And I think that's essentially what's likely to happen. So it's not as severe as Silicon Valley, because Silicon Valley had pretty rubbish assets and they'd misinvested their money. And the venture capital backed customers of theirs all withdrew their money all at the same time. But yeah, I think the bank runs are continuing, and I think we might see a couple more break before this is really over. I do a house tour. Yeah, I don't really go in for that. I mean, you can ask me stuff about my finances and personal things and so on, and I'm completely transparent with you guys about my trading. I always share that within our master options program or within the coaching community, and you can see exactly what I do. I also do private live streams with those communities, of course. Yeah, I'm a fairly private individual, I guess. So I don't really go for the here. Have a look at my Maserati. I don't own a Maserati. I don't want to own a Maserati. But yeah, I don't really go in for that. I think it's a little bit. It's interesting. I get that. I totally get it's interesting, but it's also a little bit just like cheap marketing, isn't it? So I don't know if we ever go down that road. Probably not. Would be my thought. You can see a lot of what I do. Follow me on Instagram or any of the other social platforms, Twitter and so on. You get to see a little bit more about what I do. But yeah, we're kind of keeping it to the topic, and the topic is how do you get to financial freedom much quicker, and what's the quickest path, and how does the market really work, and how does Wall Street really trade, and that's essentially what the channel is all about. It's getting you to financial freedom. That's our purpose here. Yeah, Andrea, exactly. I'm waiting to buy a Mullen, indeed. No, that's not happening. Fixed income, what's my view? Well, it's a cyclical thing, fixed income. So when interest rates go up, fixed income, which are government bonds or any other bond, they do very poorly. When interest rates come down, at that point, they become a lot more valuable. So say you buy a 10-year government bond now, I'm not saying you should, but if you did, and interest rates get cut by 1%, that bond becomes about 10% more valuable. So it's about understanding the connection between what the Fed is doing and what those bonds are worth. And that's when you know whether or not it's a good time to start buying bonds. So I started buying bonds last, September, October, something like that. And that's one way of looking at it. So I don't believe in a firm fixed allocation, because I think it depends on the market, and that's how you can kind of optimize, how you can make some nice returns out of that. But I appreciate the question. Okay, let's have another glance at the market then. So QQQ, let me look it up, is up 1%, which is pretty staggering. The S&P is also up now 1/3%. Oil is down. Orange juice prices are down, so enjoy an extra glass this morning. The US dollar is down, which is all pretty good news, right? We got big earnings in from Google and Microsoft, and the market hasn't tanked. The market is still exuberant. So interesting. But there's always a but, isn't there, with me? I'm sorry about that. I posted a chart the other day, 2 days ago, I think, in the Patreon here, and it basically goes through how the big algo funds, the quant funds, how they are positioned. And they are exceptionally long. So they've bought a lot of stocks because they kind of had to, because the market's been going up, and they haven't really got any more to buy. They're kind of out of cash. So if the market does take a downward turn, they've got about $270 billion to sell. And if the market goes up, they'll buy 5 billion, something like that. So the risk up to the upside and downside is massively skewed to the downside. And I think that's always something to bear in mind if you're a trader or a shorter term investor or something like that, about timing things. That's kind of what I'm looking at. So I think there are some opportunities in that, and potentially we are going to see, I think at some point we're going to have to get a correction. Now, that's my view on it. So I'm not hugely optimistic for the medium term at the moment. To be look at international markets or mainly US, I don't really care where the stock is from. I think if there are two companies and they are equal and one is US listed and one is not, I would buy the US listed one because there's just going to be more demand for it. But I don't really mind whether it's a European stock or a UK stock or a Japanese stock or anything like that. I think the Japanese play profitable companies. They have essentially a monopoly. They basically govern the country. Those five, Sumitomo, Mitsubishi, Mitsui, Marubeni, and all those guys, they are basically Japan. They own Japan. The tax system is structured so that only they can import certain products and process them. It's a closed shop. And then the Japanese yen is like incredibly cheap and has fallen a lot, so you can pick up returns for a lot less. I think that's essentially the play here by Buffett. It's something stable that you can buy at a discount at present. So, why not? Capitalism is dead. I think that's very unlikely that capitalism is dead. It's a system that's been around for as long as humanity's been around. So give me an alternative and we'll talk. But at this point, I think capitalism rules the world. I mean, look at Ukraine, right? Karim, have you thought about a masterclass on how to allocate your portfolio through different asset classes over time? I mean, we cover that, Karim, in our coaching program. Definitely, felixfranz.org/coaching. So that's something you want to go into. Like, I know it's an options program on the face of it, but I make people go through stocks and allocation and portfolio management and all of that, because I think it's really, really important. So we kind of hold a gun to your head and make you do it anyway. What do you think about energy? So with oil, I'm wrong too often with oil. So I'm kind of like no longer have a view on oil. With energy, I think going into a recession, energy is kind of a typical cyclical play that should do relatively well. I know it hasn't that much. We had a trade on energy. Do we still have that open? I'm not sure. Anyone else know? I know you guys what's in my portfolio more than me. But yeah, it just, the market just hasn't really moved in a rational way recently, but at some point it'll correct. So I'm patient with these things. So I think, okay, it's not doing what it's meant to be doing, but at some point it will. And when it does, let me just see to log in here. Okay, we are logging in. Oh, no, we closed out of the XLE trade we had. It just wasn't really doing anything. So we kind of went out of that one. What's doing well? We have two commodity trades open on BHP and another one. And they're doing reasonably well, but again, just nothing is really moving a lot, right? So you move up or down percent and down a percent. Nothing's really going anywhere. We summarized this in our newsletter 2 days ago as boring, basically. And that's kind of where the market's sitting at the moment. That doesn't mean you can't make money with it, but yeah, if you want to get your hands on that, go to felixfranz.org/trade. Links down below, and that takes you to where does it take you to? It takes you to Trading Floor Whispers here, this one, and you can get some real insight. Just do a week's trial here of that gold tier and see if it's for you. And we put out 3 trade ideas yesterday, for example, and really explain them in proper macro explanations, and another one a couple of days before trade ideas, and I think it makes you smarter. I think it makes you better informed, and it gives you access to information that typically only brokers and hedge funds have. And here we're making it actually available to everybody. I think that's really the point here. So felixfranz.org/trade is how you get your paws on that. Where's your drilling neighbor? He was doing his best this morning. He's probably exhausted because he was cutting channels into the concrete, which is absolutely delightful. He promises me he'll be done by Tuesday. I believe it when I see it. A French man telling you when he's going to be finished by seems unlikely. Glory be to theta decay, Matthew. Indeed, yeah. So you kind of might want to set stuff up with a lot of theta decay at the moment. I've been closing a few that've got low theta decay lately because it's just boring. This XLY trade has got a pretty nice theta decay, makes me $54 every day. I hold it, but we're going to have to decide what to do with that as well fairly soon. So yeah, a lot more excitement to be had on the shorter options, but you also get more risk with it. But P. Morton, retired Navy, living in Japan. Oh, I'm very, very jealous. Absolutely love Japan. Brilliant. And yeah, if you're getting paid in dollars, you're really enjoying yourself, right? Isn't it so different to like 5 or 10 years ago when everything was super expensive in Japan? And now you're just like, is that it? Is that all you want for it? You sure? It's kind of a funny one, how that's really turned around. Yes, I'm not quite sure. My French isn't all that good. Any other questions? Pop them into the chat. I'd be super happy to answer them. I will be posting my live trade, my test strategy live trade in 25 minutes into the Patreon. Make sure you join us there, felixschwenzer.com/Patreon, and see exactly what I do and how I do it. Yesterday was an eventful day. We went from what was meant to be $3,000 up to $7,000 down, and I then adjusted the trade, which is kind of one of the exciting things about options. You can fix it. And we ended the day $2,500 up. So it was kind of an interesting one. And overall, I probably spent 20 minutes on that yesterday, which is probably more than I usually do. But yeah. When do you think we'll have a bull market again? When the Fed starts cutting rates, I think something bigger is going to break. That's kind of my view on this. It seems unlikely that we only get these little banks kind of falling. I think something bigger will happen. That's kind of my view on it. And I'm not hoping or wishing or praying for it, but it's just sort of my inkling. I think something bigger will happen. I've been saying for weeks the banking crisis isn't over, and of course it isn't. It's still here. And I don't think fixing FRC by selling assets is going to fix anything either. There'll be other bank runs. So yeah, at some point that's what's going to happen. Did you record the adjustment? I put out the adjustment exactly that I did. So if you look in the spreadsheet, you can see exactly what I did with that. And yeah, you can look at exactly what the thought process was there. There we go. Right here. I appreciate you watching and tuning in. Thank you very much. If you want to get some more insight throughout the day, go to felixschwenzer.com/Patreon, join that community for 50 cents a day. Or if you want to get really serious and learn and just figure out what do we do? How do we do it? How do you learn from a group of investment bankers with 100 years of institutional trading experience? Go to felixschwenzer.com/coaching. Just book a call. Just ask us questions. That's really what it's all about. Zero pressure. Just ask what you want out of this, and if it's something that is feasible, and if not, we'll just give you some free resources and send you on your way. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. I wish you a beautiful day. It should be exciting today. Lots more big earnings coming in, and I will see you later.